men just like hurling metal at each other, and it's really effective. It feels very powerful and weighted. It's really cool. Very good.
Yeah, I like that stuff a lot, and all the fighting happens in these very beautifully like production designed areas of like caves, or like there's a castle with like lots of lights and fog surrounding it. Like the one thing that he does here that's uniquely him is he applies like a lot of psychedelic colored lighting to this thing to capture that sort of like magic and fantasy element.
Yeah, the sun is so often like beet red. Like it almost looks like the sun from that like Cobra or something at times.
Yeah.
It did remind me like some of the color schemes. This also must have kind of inspired. We were talking about it, I think, a little briefly. Macbeth, the newer one, just with kind of like they do more of like a stylistic thing in the new one with all those like really crazy in your face blues and oranges and stuff. But there are definitely elements.
They took a lot of inspiration from Tarkovsky for kind of like the lighting of that film. But you're right in the sense that like this is really the idea of the combat being really down and dirty and like in the mud, and stuff like that. That's definitely something that's similar between the two, which is obviously something that they would do in like Game of Thrones as well, which is something that, you know, a lot of people thought that was like the first time a fantasy movie got like really down and dirty in the medieval sort of like, you know, the way that a catapult battle would go down and how the armor would sink into the mud and how it would be kind of tough. But then you know, we go back and we're watching these older films and we see this, or we see something like Flesh and Blood that we talked about by Paul Verhoeven, which is also him doing a really nasty, like disgusting sort of like medieval film. This one's a little less nasty. It's a little bit more, you can tell that Paul Verhoeven was treating it like the way that he does his really grotesque satires in a way.
Yeah, it's more.
Whereas John Borman isn't doing a satire here. He's doing like, he clearly has a sense of romance towards this material.
Absolutely. There's a huge romantic vibe to this. Yes.
Yeah, and he really translates that just into the visuals and how much painstaking care he puts into realizing these things that he obviously read as a kid and thought were so cool and couldn't wait to put on the screen. But he takes the drama just like very seriously, and he takes the magic elements and the fantastical elements like very seriously. Like there's nothing to really like laugh out about this movie, even though it has, again, some, you know, some formal insanity and the strange sounds and colors. And I mean, even there's a sex scene here that has like a completely fiery background and stuff like that, like stuff that you would think that would be silly in another movie, but here he plays it as like so completely serious, straight, and it works,
and it has that gross element too, because, you know, it basically what it is it's Arthur's father at this point, because like this movie's so detailed with Arthur's life, we get it before Arthur's even conceptualized, before he's even, you know, a baby. We have his father who essentially rapes the mother because he takes form as the woman's husband, and then and then has sex with her, and that's because where we get that fiery background, and it's just it adds such a darkness with that, because you have that like hellscape in the background, and she thinks that it's kind of a loving moment in a sense, but you know the context, and that imagery is very well done.
Yeah, well, because then it's cutting between the shot of the daughter who has sensed that her father is actually dead, and then cutting between also the father actually dying on the battlefield.
Yeah,
like being
and his death is brutal, just falling onto a pile of spears and just like being left there to die. Yeah, it's very brutal.
Yeah,
and so that's how Arthur's conceived is that
in this really nasty, violent image of you know, death and rape and things like that.
War,
and it's also, you know, sort of like judged as, you know, an act of sin as well, because Merlin promised his father Excalibur and gave him the sword as a tool of peace, that it would unite. It has a power that unites men.
Right.
And it does technically end the battle for him. And the guy, you know, they end up making peace. And the first thing he does is he wants to have sex with the Duke's wife.
Yeah.
So like that's what, you know, for a personal sort of desire, he basically ruins that peace that he started, and Arthur is born from that. And Merlin says that he will disguise him and shapeshift him into the Duke to go and basically rape the wife if whatever results of that situation Merlin gets to keep, because Merlin obviously has an idea that he's going to have Arthur is going to be born, and then he takes Arthur away and raises Arthur as like a bit of a squire, and Uther puts the sword into the stone, getting that classic sword in the stone thing, and many years later, when Arthur is sort of like in his teens, he goes up and all these knights are trying to pull it, and eventually he just goes up to it and very easily just pulls it out, and everyone's like, holy fuck, Arthur is the king, just this lowly squire. And I'm sure most people know the basic King Arthur story, but John Boorman goes through it like this is a very straight detailed, up faithful adaptation. Just straightforward adaptation.
Yeah, and he treats